computer. Hello, welcome everybody to Singularity's Treasury Guild call. It's 4th, I don't know, April and now, and we have some discussions prepared for us regarding Q1 and 2 budget requirements and outcomes, and then we end up with questions about AGIX to ASI Merge. So the first thing, Q1 final results. How do we want to present the results? So in down hall, we did mention that it went well. That was mentioned the blocker too. However, I didn't see any how many people abstained, if any at all. And you mentioned we have specific people who voted and how much was eligible, but they didn't write it down or anything. Do we want this kind of info shared? Is the first basically a question. Yeah, I don't know why. And do we want that to be included in this calculator where we did the budget, or this is fine now? Well, what I did was we basically cleaned up when decision date was done, and cleaned up the comments and all that stuff that was left over, and that's it. And added this consent proposal link to the here.
I would say we definitely need to capture proper data on participation numbers, like 31 people eligible, 17 voted, like these kind of general stats, let's say. But I mean, it's still a discussion in a way. Like we saw this during this vote, one objection and some considerations about anonymity. So that eventually it was stepped up and not anonymous, but makes me a bit doubtful to have the results also reflect naming that one objection. Yeah, we need it.
Maybe we should ask the person, because he kind of anonymized himself in the meeting, but he might not feel like he wants that widely public.
Also keep in mind, if we document it, it's not that it's posted from SNet on Twitter or something. Most likely nobody reads the stuff, right? It's really for our documentation purpose, I think, most. Sorry, little off topic, but true.
You can't make a decision about how to document something based on the fact that you probably think nobody will read it. You can't really do that.
No, just wanted to mention that. Yeah, don't mind. Don't worry.
Would the final output be an extra report, or we just include numbers somewhere in this sheet, so we always have that thing, or have a Google Doc every quarter, end of quarter, or at the end of every decision separately, and then I just archive it separately.
That kind of documentation was something that came out of the meeting itself that people said should happen. I mean, I'm aiming to try and document the actual process on the governance skipbook, but that's not the same as the outcomes for Treasury. So
no reporting, separate reporting or standard reporting. We want to see somewhere results, but it doesn't matter where.
No, I'm saying they should be reported.
Okay.
So I did make a somewhat anonymized version of the results sheet, basically removing the name and email address columns. That in itself should also be captured, right? We did ask people for potential improvements for the next one. So I think that in itself should be captured as well. Let me grab the link.
Be takers of the feedback or something. How do we want to show proposal status? Yeah, I guess that is related to right now. It's Treasury Guild approval status is approved, but before we had also like declined and reason why. Do we still want this thing to be kind of visible in here? And like there is also color coding that shows that what was declined actually previously. And like, do we want like a back check of how this done, or do we then want to keep any of that, or we just show the current status of like, is this limit accepted, or we are waiting for improvements, or we're waiting for voting, or anybody has ideas of statuses and how they affect us, the proposals and budget requests? Oh no, so I assume I can open the Google Doc.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine. That document would be, yeah, in my mind, what we should at least be part of the things we capture, right?
So this shows that nobody abstained or objected.
Well,
Okay, one I see now. Okay, so I thought, yeah. Okay, yeah, that I think that is fine. And then we can also, do we want to include that raw data, or we should just look at it and make like a key takeaways, and then basically get the general numbers, key takeaways of this feedback, aggregated feedback, and then we have a different Google Doc, or we want to also link to this raw data, or we keep that raw data out of the result.
sorry, I'm not following which raw data you would like to maybe keep out.
The on result vote Q1 budget approval. Like we don't show a Google sheet of every single row and answer, but we summarize that and summarize the result.
I think it'd be better to have the raw data though, because obviously anonymized as it is, but you can see then that the person who said, for instance, we need rules to keep to decide on blah blah blah, wasn't somebody who objected. You can see that it's, I mean, yes, it's good to aggregate the feedback somewhere else as well, but you know, it's just useful to see who said what. Well, not who said what, but the, you know, the correlation between approving and not.
Yeah, I agree. And also this, I mean, it doesn't really prove anything since I took the sheet and made this new sheet out of it, right? So it's not fully tamper-proof, I guess. But it does capture the amount of participants, for example, right? Just having that captured somewhere, I think is a good thing, just for the attendance or like participation rates and stuff.
Okay. And anything else that is missing either here, result what you made, or in this budget calculator? When you're saying this Q1 is now finished, what is missing, what is over? I feel like this average monthly AGIX maybe column is not needed and I would delete it.
I don't know. I think average, I think it's a useful number. Like it shows that, especially the number at the bottom, the total, shows that we're not crossing budget. I mean, it's all based on the fitted budget, right? So it shouldn't cross it, but.
Yeah, then another thing is the AGIX exchange rate, how it's going to, yeah, we don't even have the average right now here. I think somebody changed it to 1, maybe it was me. But also it's missing how much is spent at this current time, and even right now the numbers that the budgets that are given in this month are going to change. So do we just keep it only budget limits basically and like proposal results and nothing else, or we also want to incorporate more stuff there?
In my mind, I would keep this as is and look to Q2 how we do it, how we can do it. Like if we could include percentage spent, for example, on earlier budgets.
Okay. well, if anything comes up in mind over the weeks or in this call or wherever, Treasury Guild channel, just drop it in here, and I will try to include it into actions or in the tool. But I will now then move on from Q1 results. I think next steps, or first, for the next steps, do we want to do this result stuff also asynchronously, get this over the way, or are we going to push that for like the next quarter and do that properly? And to revert it differently, I propose that we don't do the result document for now and like updating this stuff, and we just move on to Q2. But in Q2 we do expect ourselves to have a proper reporting on the whatever proposal.
Then we can also clearly demonstrate improvement over time. That sounds perfect to me.
Okay, no objections. Then next topic, Q2 budget requirements. So in this one, I would like to take a bit of time. I show 15 minutes. I might get it faster over. But planning to then show a bit of like a change, suggesting a change for Q2, but what was already kind of influenced by previous discussions. And then show Treasury Guild proposals and a bit of material I used to create that, to kind of give the first example. So Q2 budget requirements, they will change over time and can affect Q2 treasury management and proposal rules. So the first thing is we already have discussed it. So if you want, you can check on meeting notes and previous like meeting summaries and videos of what was discussed. But the main stuff is basically we would like to start like differentiating core costs. We would like to have proposals for like teams that have been already like established and been doing budget requests maybe only now, and also start like reporting and doing quarter reports against these proposals. It's probably lots of things still gonna break, but now have more like a systemic way to start leveraging our ambassador budget. And then another thing I think we could move on and start experimenting is continuous consent forms to accept proposals individually. So here we kind of aggregated all the proposals into one consent, but I think we could also do it for every single proposal. So, and in a first come first basis, maybe aggregate like everybody that fits proposal in like 1 month, they go into one voting. But I would prefer if you do it one by one, because we had so much struggles when we found out that we're not able to fit our budget, and then the discussions were basically endless and we couldn't got into like agreement. So now if your incentive is to get proposal accepted, then I think this kind of individual case-by-case proposal accepting will be better, because then also the consent form that is accepting it, if they have anything to say, they provide you an improvement for proposals. Yes, it will add another complexity of like what is the correct way to object against proposals, but here I think we have a little bit experience on that, and then we can also improve that mechanism too. So yeah, before I go any further here, actually, does anybody want to say something or add something on this this notion of the rules are going to change? Each proposal will be looked at individually, but over time they may have different criteriums they pass, because we just updated requirements in this quarter.
Well, I would imagine if oh, sorry, Vanessa, I see you on mute as well.
Oh no, I was just going to say that personally, I think it's not helpful for us to be scrutinizing individual budgets and going, oh, you've charged too much for this, or you've charged too much. We need to have some clear rules about, not rules, but guidance on what is a valid reason to object, I think, because I don't think it should be, oh, I, who don't go to your work group and don't really know anything about you, think that you have overvalued such and such a thing that you do. It's like, we can't judge that for each other, and each work group needs to have autonomy to be able to say, this is what we value this at. I mean, I don't know if maybe we need to have a maximum total per quarter. I don't think we would, but if that makes people feel happier, then we could. But I just think the process of approving should be about, have you accounted for it? And have you got a way that we can track that you've done what you said, rather than, I personally think that you are overvaluing a task that is important to you. That shouldn't be the reason.
I'm inclined to agree with that, but I also would like to add that if everybody feels that one work group is requesting silly amounts for, let's say, meeting facilitation, which they value at $1,000 per session, right? In a way yeah, then sure, they might have awesome facilitation, but I think most outside of that work group would say that it's way too much.
It is tricky if you get to that situation, but I don't know. I really would prefer to try and find ways where, I don't know, where we could do it without stymieing people kind of developing something that is important for their work. Oh, I don't know. You know what I'm saying, I think. But yeah, I also wonder about this whole, the whole process of voting on each one. I think it should be that we have a date whereby all of them should be in. Because say, like, what I'm trying to say is that if somebody put in a request for, I don't know, $20,000 or whatever, and the price was high and we knew they did good work and whatever, I'd feel differently about it than if I found that everybody had put in 20,000, because then obviously we can't cover it and people. So do you know what I mean? I wouldn't support it in the same way. So I think we have to have a date where all the budget requests are in so we can look at them as a whole rather than doing them one by one.
It also kind of ties in with the suggested role of like an independent proposal review role, right? Not super convinced how feasible this would be to arrange. I do think it would be good to have, but yeah, every time I think about it, I keep feeling like, yeah, so who exactly would do that then, and how do we ensure that they're impartial? It's an interesting question. Like right now, we don't have any maximums, and I do think it would make sense to have some maximums, be it percentage or absolute. I'm not even sure yet at this point. But yeah, to have open-ended budget proposals where other work groups cannot really object to it, that in itself doesn't sit well to me.
Yeah, and in setting maximums, it's tricky because some work groups are always going to be lower cost than others. So you'd have to think of something other than just divide the amount by the number of work groups, because that wouldn't work, would it?
No, it wouldn't. No, I agree.
I suppose I'm just saying that in the past I've seen it as quite, I wouldn't go so far as to say poisonous, but I think it's been damaging when people have nitpicked each other's budgets in quite a nasty way and kind of said, oh, yeah, I'm not going to say more because we're being recorded, but I just think the whole idea of going, oh, this work group, you're charging too much for this. It's like, if you don't go to that work group and you don't know why they're doing that, it doesn't feel very helpful.
But then it's also an opportunity to clarify that why is that the budget, and that it adds that clarification, add that weight, and then they have an opportunity to decide again then on object, I guess.
In theory, yes, but it can feel so targeted, and I'm aware of groups having felt quite targeted and quite sort of stressed about having to come and justify something. If we could find a way to frame it in a different way that is less, I mean, it's not punitive, is it? But whatever the word is for putting people on the spot in a nasty way.
So that kind of implies that
And judging one group by another group's standards as well.
Would this then kind of imply that this? I'm not saying we should implement an impartial role to judge all budgets, but it would then also go to all meetings. That's gonna make it harder to find somebody up for doing that.
I don't know if they should have to go to all meetings, but I just think we need to move the decision away from the whole concept of going, you're doing that differently from how I do it, so therefore you're wrong and you can't charge that. I mean, there's some groups I look at and I think, blimey, that's a high price for that. But if they see that as a priority and that's what they want to spend their money on, then
I think the way we are assessing proposals will be another culture shock in a sense, but it doesn't matter to me if we are in context of should we have like continuous proposal accepting, so propose whenever and we vote when the proposal is in instead of quarterly, or having like a quarterly guidance for proposals, because in both cases there will be proposals and people will be assessing, and it just, I guess, need to keep in mind how do we do that, and that's a separate topic of how do we assess the proposals.
How does the continuous process work, given that the ambassador program gets an amount of funding quarterly? I see there's a danger there that whoever puts in first gets what they ask for, and anybody who doesn't might not, and that doesn't seem right to me.
So yeah, I think it could be a bit of like epoch based. So for example, today we'll share you the Treasury Guild proposal, and let's say everybody that in this month puts in all of these proposals will be voted for that. So yes, there is like this first come first basis. However, at the current rate and at the price, we have the luxury to play that without reaching a limit. But when the prices are in future gonna or one of us the problem is going to scale, we're gonna have problems with that. But we did have even bigger problems when we were posing all at once, and then we couldn't get anything passed. So it's except none of the ways are perfect, but I think this is a slight different change, and it will be, I think, operational side it will be a little bit easier, and of course it adds a bit of this voting fatigue. But I think that's compared to endless meetings, it's a slightly better outcome.
See that white sticky where you've got reduces the complexity, blah, 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 when budget limits are met. What are the budget limits? Are we implementing a budget limit?
The quarterly ambassador limit.
Oh, I see. Sorry. Yeah.
Okay, so let's change a bit of gear and move to the Treasury Group proposal. So over a few days, I shared in the chat too, I drafted the Treasury Group proposal, but I will slightly want to give a background in a sense of how that came to be, in a sense like what tools I used, and because it's like recorded and people see. I tried this starting a work group document that was created few weeks ago. There probably are some updates, but basically here are a list of questions why the work group is needed, who will be facilitated. And I think that kind of process to clarify, was this work group or discussion I had even accepted? And to see if I have like everything required before we even start drafting. And I got like confirmation by reading that document that I felt like I do. And then, yeah, here was some good starting points. I also incorporated 2 questions into requirements matrix statement. So if I zoom out, it's the same Treasury Guild call. Added this purple stuff here where the changes are made. But basically this middle section, workgroup space and the guilds too, here are some rules changed. So, for example, agreement formation about this long-term and contributors can object against proposals, and then the minimum amount of supporters required. Quite a lot of stuff remained the same, but I would say it's slightly less information now. So it's, I would say, somewhat easier. The treasury part, or like the resource management part, is still undone. We don't have yet the template how would we expect proposal budgets, but that is something I think we will be focusing in coming weeks. Yeah, a lot of reduced team requirements, like start creating minimum one communication channel. So here, some differences. And all of these, this matrix table also has this kind of fighting questions, like how many people need to agree. Okay, that's the like starting point, like why is work group needed, how group is adding value, how do I evaluate the work group, and so on. So I think that is if you're starting to write the proposal, I think it's a valuable thing to go through and glimpse through, and that helps you to establish a good starting point. And another thing that actually helped me was when you do quarterly reports, then it kind of gives you this, like the flow of what actually happened. So combining it with what was the goals of the work group, and then looking at the results of what was achieved, it helps to kind of attune for the next steps. So this is the new Treasury Guild document. People can add it or remove or stuff. Right now, I made it like a bit more complex in a sense that I added 3 work groups under it, or 2 work groups under it. So both the operations work group is part of it, and then this new idea work group that we ideated, the policymakers. So this also means that it basically has like 3 value additions. And like several goals. For deliverers part, I'm not sure, is this a good way to go on? It somewhat feels like a bit of too much detail to go through, but then on the other side, it's maybe even too little. So that is, I guess, over time to be scrutinized. How do we expect people to show deliverables, and what level and how detailed it is should be. The calculator is pretty much similar. I didn't change here yet, so maybe that can be used as like the first like starting material when you do budget reports. So I just gave a name. Added one category of like differentiating what this Treasury Guild is costing, and the work we are preparing here and ideating here, and compared to then operation work group where we just have operational facilitators, and then this new policy work group where there will be a bit of more cost lines. Market value still kept the same. I also added software and hardware requirements, but in a sense that like Excel license for treasury operations is needed, and treasury operation facilitators are able to run Excel and share screen and Zoom at the same time. So I thought I just gonna mention that because it has been now twice the case that it has stopped people to be able to contribute to the operation call. And also teamwork management is required to be an efficient contributor here, to kind of know ins and outs how people are rewarding each other. For teams and role skills, and somewhat same, I did all that, add the policymaker in, and policy selector, and also Treasury Guild member status, and described it a bit more. So also gamified like a different way to get to recognize treasury members. And so those who cannot get like a tag in Discord too. How to get onboarded largely remains the same. Measures and metrics. I did notice that in the quarter report, I didn't actually put any of these measures and metrics. So that is something I think should be coupled together, where if you put measures and metrics in your proposal, it would make sense that you report on that and quarterly report too. And yeah, for a roadmap, help existing work group and guilds with budget requests by bi-weekly Treasury Guild sessions. So this is what we are doing right now. provide additional bi-weekly sessions to improve ambassador treasury rules and management. So that would be that new work group. And provide additional bi-weekly sessions for the opportunity and lessons to manage ambassador program treasury. So this would be the operators work. And documentation, this same middleware. That would be the minimum information proposal. What do you think, Mr. How would you scrutinize it? Not a bad word, but it was mentioned today, so I thought attached to it. Any thoughts on this? And how do you think, are you able to do similar proposals for your own work groups that you're involved with, or that would be too much an ask?
I mean, I'm
Yeah.
just this thing you've got here of a requirements matrix table with guiding questions. I sort of think maybe that is overkill, having a matrix like this. I kind of feel we maybe just need a simple list of what information you have to include. I mean, in the real world, this is how many funders operate. They tell you what information you need to include. How you write it is kind of your call.
Yeah, so this matrix has like two things. One is guiding questions, another is what you just meant, what it needs. There is also Google Doc versions. However, you're right, I didn't update the Google Doc version with the new questions. But I would say I wouldn't really need to, because that's starting a new work group. That is the substitute now. To be
See,
more
that's the
specific.
thing, though, that suggested process doesn't match what you've got in that matrix, and that's why I was asking that question, because that's going to really confuse people.
And what do you mean not matching? This the middle column would be the same thing, and I tried to
No, but you've got,
basically.
say like, for example, you've got no agreement needed, simply start, and that's not what we've got in the document.
Yeah,
So
but that's different. That's a seed work group. So we had.
yeah, no, but we're suggesting a different process. So it's just it's gonna confuse people. I'm not saying one's right and the other's wrong. I'm just saying if it says two different things, it's going to really muddle people.
Yeah, so in this matrix, there are three different processes for a totally new person, and for more also either new or a bit of advanced work group, and that is now also what you outlined. And
No,
then there
it's
is
not
also.
actually. That's the thing. What we've got in that document includes stuff about the seed work group. I don't want to hold up the conversation here because I think this is, you know, we should be focusing on the treasury elements of this, but I kind of think we need a clearer process for how a work group starts and is ratified. And we were going to suggest that we brought it up in a governance meeting, and then maybe we could make the two things match. Because I just think it's going to really muddle people if we've got two different processes, that's all. I mean, for anyone who's interested, I think the difference in what that document says is that with the seed work groups, it gives a seed work group a really small amount of money, so they can't really test out whether they're doing anything and whether it's working. Whereas we're suggesting that they'd have maybe a little bit of a bigger budget, but people can't keep on suggesting new work groups and getting a budget and then, oh, it failed, oh, I'll do another one. So yeah, it's just kind of a process to try and ensure that doesn't happen. But to be honest, I think this is not like the main focus of what we should be talking about here, because there's not that many new work groups trying to start. So, you know. Sorry, I know I keep talking, I know I'm talking too much, but it just feels to me like the route here is that we've still got this disagreement about whether putting in a budget involves putting in a new proposal. And I think it's partly it's semantics. It's like you call it a proposal, I call it a funding request, but it feels to me like maybe a budget or a quarterly funding request needs to relate to something that's already been established about a work group, like what it's for, rather than, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong there, but it feels like it should.
Yeah, although I keep coming back to this matrix table, but with the same kind of way I felt is like that at the beginning there is opportunity that you simply start in a sense that we support you to create like a facilitation job. Yes, there are no rewards, but we still everything is like kind of allowed to be done. And as soon as you want resources, then you start making budget requests, or at some point it has to just come case by case and like in the out. But there is like you feel the need that okay, it requires now like a proposal that this is something that is continuously happening and that it's showing value. And this is where you basically make a proposal for the budget. But I also say from a top down now, if we can call that, because we already have established guilds, and I see them as a place where you incubate more different kind of work groups. And like I showed here, I didn't make a new proposal. I just added few lines into Treasury Guild right now, and already kind of requesting through that method several $1000s in budget. And in the budget line also added like 4 items or like 5 items. I don't know. So it's also looking at different side where you already have a space and you're just expanding your project. So you don't really make a new proposal. So it's two-way street to satisfy somebody's problem or needs, either and to get to that level or we come towards to him to help that.
I'd really like to know how many people feel clear that there is a real distinction between a work group and a guild in practice. Because I think that's part of the issue for me, is that I don't particularly see that difference.
Yeah, I personally have a pretty clear view of the difference, but I don't know what others think. If anybody newer wants to share their experience, like Duke, Clement, AutoG, Aja, or what do they think? What's the difference between guilds and workgroups?
Okay, guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, so I'll be quite honest that I don't quite know the distinctive difference between the both of them. It's something I have brought up severally, you know, when I just joined and when I started communicating actively, I couldn't quite tell what the distinctive difference between both of them are. However, in my own imagination, I would think that a work group is a sub unit of a guild, right? Maybe a guild is, you know, a guild just naturally has larger components and all of that. And then a work group is sort of like what you have in the marketing guild, right? And then you now have the writers work group, right? That is a subgroup of the marketing guild. You have the video work group that is a subgroup of the marketing guild. You have, you know, probably the promotions work group. You have the PR public relations work group. You know, all of these are subgroups of a larger body, you know, that regulates how each of these subgroups interact with themselves, right? This is my own interpretation of it. However, I haven't seen this outplay in every other guild and work group, so I cannot apply this as the actual meaning, you know, to what we, or the actual implication to what we have here as guilds and work groups. Right. So I think I followed the conversation to an extent. At some point I had to step out, but I understand Vani's concerns, and I see from where she's coming from. But personally, I'll be quite honest. I can't quite put a very definite line of difference between a guild and a work group. Thank you.
Thank you. AutoG.
Yeah, hi everyone.
Yep, we can hear you.
Yeah, I think the guild and work group, I think they are the same. I think that based on the function of what each member, that's the guild, and the work group, what they perform on the space. I think they're the same. Stated that common interest. If maybe there is a treasury guild, they have like a common interest to meet a particular group, and if there is a work group also, they have a particular interest to common group. But where I see the difference, where I see like a bit of difference is that maybe a group might be like a subsection of a guild. I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
There is a little bit sound, low sound, but I did understand that it seems to be dependent on the members, what they do in the space, and another part difference I wasn't actually able to catch. Yeah. So, but do we want to? So again, we feel like they are. We kind of know what we expect them to be, but they are practically they are not, like the Vanessa is mentioning. Do we want to kind of educate people around the difference? Do we want to kind of make it clear somewhere what's the difference? And then
I suppose my question would be, what is the advantage of having that difference? Because I mean, we're saying work groups are like a subunit of a guild. Yeah, that's kind of how I understood it was supposed to be. And a guild, as Sucren has said in the chat just now, is an umbrella for a work group. But okay, we've got onboarding work group. What umbrella is that supposed to be under? We've got archives work group. Which umbrella are we supposed to be under? We're not. And so in practice, it's not actually valid.
Yeah, on that note, actually, for example, in case on onboarding work group, to me, that was a part of like a process guild, in a sense that the onboarding processes and that kind of way started there, but the niche issue was never really solved. And then Sucren took the lead, and now it just became its own thing. So I could tell that that the work group can start without a guild, and that's okay. But at some point, I feel like when there are too many people now in, for example, in onboarding guild, and it starts to, well, I mean, onboarding work group that focuses on very specific things, but at some point, maybe if there is scales up, then it turns into like onboarding guild, and then the work groups are doing very specific operational tasks. So it basically meant to allow scaling and in a way that people understand.
What practical difference does it make in terms of budget? That's my question. In budgeting and in accounting for your budget.
Practical difference is just basically narrative building, understanding that, and we also somewhat felt like maybe Treasury Guild can basically make workgroups so they can kind of have their own treasury. So each guild becomes basically like another treasury that finances workgroups at the end. But I don't know, that might be way too much future. Right now, I guess there isn't that much practical financial difference other than just segregating different types of rewards and teams in terms of on-chain data.
So to answer the question about the onboarding unit, because in all honesty, after, 9 months in the organization, I don't know the difference between these two types of units. But probably because I never really wanted to find out. But to me, there are these major work streams of effort. So I would think there would be contributor, participant, member, basically member services work stream, of which onboarding would be a component, and some other components would be, for example, treasury. For example, if we ever get around to take care of members' mental health, our efforts towards standardizing conflict resolution. So basically, the internal workings of the organization as compared to this other major kind of outreach work stream that of which marketing would be a part. So for example, education as it stands now, focusing on the member education would be under member services. If it ever gets around to actually do external seminars or educational programs that are, ecosystem facing, that would be the other thing. I mean, this is obviously not a new idea that's been charted before, that there are people who want to work in, inside the organization, and others are interested in facing outwards. And I think having that in place would be smart, but so far I haven't seen that, that conceptual separation picked up.
If it's not picked up, do we then really need it? And then we can also say that we don't differ guilds.
Well, when you say we, do you mean the organization? Yes, of course the organization needs it. Do individuals need it? If you're comfortable where you're at, then you don't need it.
The only way to find that out would, I guess, be a consent form again. Because in this, but then, and basically it's about, we differentiate them to agree, but you don't have to follow it. I don't know, it's not like you don't have to follow it, it's just you don't have to acknowledge it in that sense. But there is if there is a difference, that where guilds would be a space for collective work groups to come together and share ideas, where work groups has usually more focus on doing the work of executing or implementing something. And
again, I mean, this is not a fresh idea, having participated in a number of DAOs and organizations. This is a, frequent pattern. So I don't know if we're unique enough not to have that need.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, it's interesting to make the point. Simple question can unleash and has a lot of potential in the response. I agree with Walter. We are not unique. We are lacking on a lot of things, but we have a lot of potentials. Just making the question made me think about several efforts that I'm working with other community members, and I can see how internally operations is a work group in a guild already, and probably is something that it will be good to communicate. And I don't know if it's a consent form or probably how can we use this structure and how can we implement it already in guilds that we are trying to organize as the R&D. We're trying to get better at what we're doing, and we struggle with several things. So understanding better how we can not only conceptualize but also work together. Yeah, it's all about understanding our needs. So, and not only that, also how, as you mentioned, Tevo, some work groups got already big. Yeah, how can we use that strength or resources and try to compartmentalize, divide one work group into different objectives without losing their identity and being independent, but still targeting the same objectives. Yeah, so thank you for pointing it out, Vani, because it's making me think a lot, certain things that I need.
Sorry. Yeah, I think as long as you're not suggesting an actual budgetary implication for this, for example, a hierarchy where a work group's budget has to be in some way kind of overseen by a guild, then there's no problem from my side anyway. But in practice, I think we all are clear that work groups are not working under the direction and supervision of a guild, and they seem to be doing fine that way, and they probably shouldn't necessarily have to. So as far as I'm aware, there's not been any situation up until now where a work group's budget has had to be supervised by a guild, and it just looks a little bit as if you're trying to bring that in, and I'd be kind of pretty much against that.
Yeah, so I think the self-governance of each work group is going to still be like the main style and the culture we are doing here. But yeah, thinking now how to make guild and work groups exist at this level playing field and also be helpful to each other. And like Duke.
Yeah, so I share Vani's sentiments in her last comment. And with respect to that, it just begs the question, if the work groups do not answer to a guild, then what's the essence of differentiation? Because I think she asked the question earlier that I do not know if it was attended to, about what difference. There's a way Vani framed it that made a lot of sense about what difference exists between a work group and a guild with respect to the Treasury Guild and accounting. Right. So if we are not, I like to think that if we're not in any way suggesting that a work group answers to or responds to a guild in any way, then what's the essence of, differentiation? What are we trying to get at with the entire differentiation conversation and all that?
Yeah, I guess also the relations between guilds and work groups will be totally, again, case by proposals, where I am methodically creating work groups that are related to guilds, where some are just wanting to get specific thing done, or that name just makes sense. So, okay. For now, the way I kind of feel like this is going is that we do want to differentiate them. We might want to make them clear. So let's, I guess we need to just write them clearly down somewhere in onboarding documents. What's the difference? And I guess we can start the draft of that document and then share it out. And then at some point present it in town hall, and then we have more knowledge of the differentiation of them, even if it's still a loose one. But before we go into the next agenda, regarding this Treasury proposal now, is it missing anything, or would it be ready to be created and consented for a budget? And we could basically draft it up, or do we want to wait for more people to write proposals before we do this collective one, or as soon as proposal is ready, we link it with the forum, get it around, and then look blockers and results at the 2 weeks, and if there is none, we fix the budget limit, we reduce the quarterly budget, and so that is left to others, and so basically and repeat the process until we either have no budget left in this quarter or new quarter started and people are doing more budget requests.
Personally, I find it too long and detail oriented, because to me personally, it's kind of mind numbing trying to wade through it. What would be useful is it like, in which ways is it different from what Treasury has been doing so far? Because I'm cool with, you know, it continuing that. If we are making changes, then I'd appreciate a little bit more focus on that. If you've heard complaints that people need change to your current operation, you know, you may want to mention that. But other than, like, it's good that you folks have a plan, but is that what you do you need an organization-wide approval on that level of detail?
So you're basically saying that it's too much detail and it's unclear what has changed compared to.
Right. So, like, is the budget same or similar to before? Are the expected services and deliverables similar? Because otherwise, at this level of complexity, majority of people, myself included, would just say yay without really attempting to, you know, internalize or clarify all the details. So to me, it's like, if it's if it's that okay with you, that's fine, but you invested a lot of effort. Maybe, you know, some kind of 2-paragraph overview on top would satisfy that.
Okay.
Want.
So you would suggest additional paragraph about changes, or would there be, like, I can also color out what is added? Which one would you prefer?
Like I said, when I see so much detail, my immediate reaction is like, you know, it's just, like I said, for me to make a decision, for you to have a plan is one approach. For me to make a decision, it's different. So for me to do one, like I said, I'd love to see incrementally, this is removed, this is added, budget implication is this, these changes is because we're responding to these complaints, these are fresh ideas that are going to make it all better. Boom, I can make that decision. Probably won't fit in 1 paragraph, but maybe 2.
Okay.
So it's just think of the, you know, user focus, like what do the, you know, approvers need to know to make their decision.
Okay.
Yeah, I kind of agree with that. It feels to me like the content is fine, but it's very jargony in the way it's written, and there's probably more. It's like some things seem to be repeated, but they're jargonized in different ways. I think what people want to know is, what do you propose to do and how much will it cost? And I think that could be a good model for everybody's budgets. So maybe in a way, just the spreadsheet is enough. I don't know, but I don't know if we need to specify some of the things that you're trying to specify.
I think it's tremendous to have it, but, you know, having a plan and have it detailed is beautiful. Expecting everybody to wade through it and understand it is kind of demanding. Think of the whatever it is now, 25 people. It's just not going to happen.
31. So all the more so.
I personally dislike spreadsheet type planning, where a direction or a work item is reduced to 2 words. But like I said, and for me personally, it would be a differential, because Treasury is one unit that has been consistently delivering these services to the internal customers for at least 2 quarters now. A lot of others are not that far along.
Okay, so there are few things to improve on the proposal. It is an open draft, so if somebody wants to help change, that is open, and note your time. This is also the rewarded activity. But even then, when the changes are done, shall we do a Google form and consent? Or how do you imagine we are accepting the proposals?
I think at the organizational level, it needs to be approved as a package. The budget for the organization is a collection of line items for individual, and until you balance those and whatever you negotiate changes, it should be approved at that level. If you need feedback along the way, that I think is a very reasonable request.
Oh, so you mean going into Treasury Guild proposal budgets themselves and like line by line, like, yes, these meetings we have right now, these are accepted. However, this policy work group needs a little bit work, so this will be on hold until changes are
If
made.
you need the organizational level feedback, you publish that as a request to an ambassadors and say, we're ready for review. We would appreciate it in this time frame. Pay attention to this first, respond like this, you're done. If nobody responds, you assume it's ready for whatever, rebalancing of budgets.
Sorry, I've got 2 windows open. I'm trying to look at one and the other. I think one of the things that feels a little bit to me like it's missing is, yeah, you've got measures and metrics, but they're not actually as objective as you said there. You've titled them objective. I don't know, that distribute rewards effectively and fairly. Who's going to analyze? Who's going to decide whether you have done that? I mean, what are you going to demonstrate to show that you've done that? I mean, the second one provides space for Treasury discussions and number of active facilitators. That's quite a clear one. That's fair enough. But I would suggest that providing space for Treasury discussions doesn't necessarily just depend on the number of facilitators. The other thing that I think might be an issue with this is that many of these seem to be about Treasury Guild per se over however much time. I think maybe we need to focus on quarterly quarterly aims. What you do in this quarter, and what is it going to cost, and how will you show that you've done it? I don't know, maybe I'm wrong there. Maybe we should be aiming to look, across the board for the ages. But I don't know, it feels like that is part of what makes it hard to assess, because a work group's aims do change from quarter to quarter, and a work group's work will change. So I think I'd find it easier to assess if it was literally about this quarter.
Well, when you're asking about those goals and how those can be done, that in and of itself is an item we can work on together. There are a number of measures one can apply quantitatively, some variant of Gini coefficient, something, how well distributed it is, or are there 2 humps, insiders and outsiders. You can solicit feedback and filter positive and negative, right? One can do quality assurance in meaningful ways.
But this is what I'm asking, Walter, is that whilst I can see many things that could be there as measures and metrics, I wonder if my approval of somebody else's proposal should depend on them using the metrics that I think fit rather than the ones that they think fit.
Right.
And it's back to the question, it's back to the question that we started with.
This
really.
preponderance of quantitative, scalar, whatever, metrics is misguided. You want to have a way to assess, but how you do it is, indeed instituting metrics that have this flaw is not a good idea. And it's amazing, but people who are quoted to have asked for those, either Deming or Drucker, didn't actually say that you have to have those kinds of metrics. And actually, Drucker has compelling arguments not to do that. And it's kind of like the well-understood problem that once you adjust your business to a fixed metric, it stops being a metric and instead becomes this misguided thing. Because these are always proxies for the real world. And matching the real world is always more important than having these vanity metrics. So having a meaningful assessment is key. Having a toolbox of doing assessments is also useful. And those can be based on perceptions internally, perceptions externally, and measures one can derive from observable outcomes. And balance of those is probably a good idea. It's like we can maintain the humanity of it without just saying, people do whatever, whenever.
Okay.
Also, I think taking the punitive component out of it, and instead of saying you have to meet it or you're going to get beat up, and instead saying these are the improvement, kind of North Star, I think would be a much more positive outlook.
Basically, I think that could be covered. So if you do the forum, consent forum, then I approve the proposal, but here is the feedback, how to improve it. But yeah, coming back to the time we have spent, I just realized we got lost in the discussions, and so we do have one item of questions about AGIX to ASI Merge, and let's tackle it in a way that everybody, can you list all the questions that are in your mind, or you see that are very common and not answered still? Let's collect them and in this Miro board, so that in this like 5 minutes, so that asynchronously over this coming days we can find answers and then make a report on the results we do find. There were some AMA, I have been in several Twitter messages, so I might have some answer, and I guess collectively we all kind of have some kind of answers. So when we see that question list, we can come up with the answers asynchronously for our and do some kind of establishing on that. Unfortunately, I don't think we can have a good discussion about it in this last minutes. Walter, you have your hand up.
My concern about this transition is how it's going to affect ambassadors' very existence as a funded entity, because they already explained in AMA why they didn't include the, what is it, council, you know, group in any of the decisions for whatever reasons, but that to me sets the trend that you know, they're just gonna do as a corporate secret finances approval thing. So at which point, like, us being a subsidiary was a third of their budget, and they themselves kind of being deprioritized. I'm just not like sure what that means to our, you know, charter.
Yeah, I agree. And I think yesterday in the same May, it also felt like they want to use the supervisory council reward. So the protocol is funding periodically, and this is where the ambassador program rewards are coming from. They want to buoy the fetch AI computing power with that next 100,000, which would mean that if that stops ambassador program rewards and it's not really taking from like future, but our next rewards, then we wouldn't have budget for the next 1 quarter or however long it is.
Yeah,
yeah,
that
maybe.
to me is a very not too compelling part of the argument, because people are not truly competing on resources, you know, on CPUs right now. You know, because you look at the likes of Meta and Twitter releasing these super extra models into public domain. So effectively, people are able to release tremendous stuff without monetizing it today. So saying that, okay, we're also going to have the compute power because like whatever, I mean, that to me is not very compelling reason for a merge.
Yeah. And Tuk, you have a good question. Where are the links? So I added that also in here, which will be our output to aggregate all these different meetings that are happening, and some websites that are shared, like Gitbook and stuff, where are also answers.
One thing that came up in a decision-making tooling meeting earlier today was just the question of whether and how we could translate reputation and contribution scores that are built on a Cardano basis to the new, basically Ethereum-based ecosystem that we're going to have after the merge. I've got no idea. I just threw it out as a question.
And here is a quick answer, is that they still are going to use Cardano, and for us it's a simple switch. So instead of AGIX, everything will remain the same, but the tokens will be ACI.
I guess since no one is talking, I wanted to ask a question on this med. So I don't know what would be the conversion rates for an AGIX to an ASI. I don't know. I was hearing something like 0.3, which is very low. So I don't know. Is anyone hearing me?
I mean, they've been published. You're welcome to also look at that. The meaning of that, particularly since it's framed in terms of fully diluted rather than issued, is also questionable to me. But
you say that the naming is questionable?
well, if the decisions are going to be made based on issued tokens, but the valuations are based on fully diluted, then I think it may create undesirable consequences.
So what's the question would be that why the tokens were distributed the way they are?
No, it's just I'm saying in response to how one finds out the ratios, they've been published 0.4 something for us, right? And so basically, what is it? Fetch gets a much larger allocation, which is also to me a concern, but I think they're the least reliable component. You know, they have the least recognition in the ecosystem as a solid long-term whatever.
It's hard to come up a question related to that. I would say it's a concern. Does Sucren or Clement have any, or Guilermo have any questions about AGIX, ASI, or just your understanding of it as of now, as we are gonna take these last insights in, and then I'm gonna start the meeting summary, and then okay, I have a meeting in 3 minutes. Okay. Basically, share your insights, and then I'm gonna close the call. If you have any.
Go for it, Tevo. On my side, I think that the market, the dilution, the market cap, and everything is based on price. I think, I don't know, Walter, I've been doing some research on Fetch, and they have a strong agent structure, and they're putting, it's a big part that they are adding, as I think, yes, LightNet and also Ocean. My understanding from yesterday, ASI, my concerns were on how we will use them on the efforts we have been building for the last year and a half, and I think Tevo answered that, and they did yesterday on the MAA. Also, we're gonna keep Cardano. So those were news. It was my bigger concern, and hopefully this take us to a good and solid north. Then thank you, Tevo, for all of this. I'm gonna follow later with the documents you share and put some effort to understand it. And if you guys are not have any comments on nothing, proceed with a summary that I enjoy.
Well, thanks for joining. The meeting summaries will follow in as soon as possible in a couple of days. Have a great rest of the day with other people, other networks. And yeah, thanks again, trying to figure out how do we budget and manage resources in Ambassador program. With this, I will close the call.